Ross just sucks.
Fun? Where was the fun? Tell me specifically, which part was the fun part?
Hello friends, and welcome back to ReddX, your source for the freshest daily Reddit content anywhere on the internet. Promise swearsies it's just a fact, and it's totally science. Go ahead and look it up. Today we're jumping into r/RPGHorrorStories. This will be, I believe, the third installment in the Ross Ballad, written by user Castle Bravo XBDC, something like that. I've been coming at him pretty hard, all things considered. You know, it's hard for me to discern whether we're supposed to dislike Ross more or dislike the OP more, so I guess things will unfold. We've got 3 stories left that he's written, so it will all be painted today. I'll go ahead, I'll make this a super beefy episode, and then also probably upload a compilation of all the parts together so you can kind of take your pick. But for now, let us do the thing that we always do, get the plugs and disclaimers out of the way, and then we will jump into some r/RPGHorrorStories cringe. And as per usual, we start out the Ballad of Ross with OP's little song here. Still doesn't hold a candle to Zuka, but hey, at least he tried, I guess. Crafting a story left us all sorry. I think OP's Canadian. Writing was not his forte. Perhaps a tactician is he. The lead I bury, but do not worry, your confidence I won't betray. In a moment, the obvious you will see. I gotta say, writing doesn't seem to be your forte either, OP. In a homebrew he took part in, plans and plots made a linchpin. They encountered a threat devoured by undeath, of a ruin they were soon in. Oh god, that hurts. But understand me when I say he made a blunder, he still makes me wonder how he made that decision. Linchpin soon in decision, yeah, I guess. Climbing walls to sneak behind by way of directly before, I made him roll each time. I saw his soul die, and so he began to whine, and despite success, he managed to fail, despite how I implored. Another time, another world, another combat situation, another plan, another roll, another soul ablation. Behold, a necromancer of sorts, who casts a flame wall. Behold, Ross has the answer, and like a panther, decides to climb a wall. Despite our pleas to freeze, if he'd please, and trust these words of wisdom, Ross disagrees with ease. He has expertise, and continues the party's schism. I said it before, and I'll say it some more. The one point I want to underscore. If there's one truth I sleuthed from my youth, it is this. Ross just sucks. So he likes climbing walls. Go ahead, sue the guy. Player won't stop climbing walls in the middle of combat. Gets angry when he keeps, missing combat. Names have changed. Oh, Ross, I've talked of you so much lately. Here, for instance. That's the story from the last video. One thing I will admit to being absolutely impressed with by Ross was his ability to stick to his convictions. When he sets his mind on something, he will fasten a kung fu grip so tight onto it that no amount of reality will buck him off. He will ride his desires and delusions into even hell itself. I know this to be true, as he has dragged me into it more than once. There's something to be said for stubbornness. The first D&D character Ross ever played was a teeny tiny Japanese ninja girl. The second D&D character Ross ever played was a teeny tiny Japanese monk cat girl. It's getting worse. We never did manage to remember the name that he had given to either character, as they were just a mouthful of Japanese names that my brain mercifully refused to allow entry into my memory. It was just as well, because even though one was played in a 2nd edition Greyhawk-inspired homebrew, and the other was played in a 3rd edition Eberron-inspired homebrew, They were basically completely indiscernible from each other in any way, having basically the exact same personality as each other, which is, to clarify, no personality at all. Hey, come on, they got personality. They're Japanese and girls. That is all the makings of a neckbeard. Just see all Japanese women as the same cardboard cutout. Great job. I would say that they just had his personality, but that would be too generous a characterization of the sock puppets that he ostensibly roleplayed. No, Ross's personality began and ended with Japanese fetishization, Star Wars, The Matrix, and Gem and the Holograms. But at least that's something. Gem and the Hologram seems kinda out of sorts. The wiser among you, i.e. anyone that no longer eats paste, can differentiate between an interest and a personality, and may be thinking to themselves at this point, hey, those aren't personalities, those are just things someone likes. That'd be like saying someone's personality was pizza, or the smell of freshly folded laundry. And to you, I would say, you're absolutely correct, but shush, I'm trying to tell a story here. Jeez. Being right isn't the point. Reality seldom found cause to impose itself into Ross's thought process. Ross found a way to make Gem and the Holograms a personality. It was outrageous. Truly, truly outrageous, but despite this metaphysical accomplishment, most of those personality features couldn't easily transition to D&D, so his characters' personalities were basically just hollowed out versions of himself, like someone had scooped out Ross's insides and made a frowny-faced jack-o'-lantern filled with melted cheese and sour cream instead of a birthday candle. What the hell are you talking about, OP? I mean, I kind of agree to a point, you know, like I always say, like things, but don't become a fan. Don't let it consume your entire being. And maybe that's the point that OP's trying to make, but instead he brings in this metaphor with like a jack-o'-lantern and a birthday candle. Like, I'm not following, honestly. But we called Ross's character Kitty. Despite this, Ross fancied each character in turn quite the tactician, and while I wouldn't call him Sun Tzu, crawling kitty style has become a strategy synonymous with Ross's philosophy of combat and will survive through the ages unmarked as a testament to his incredible tactical genius. I had blown up a large island. It wasn't nearby, but parts of the island nation rained down along the continent, sowing destruction and discord as part of a plot that we never got around to resolving, and as a way of doing some interesting encounters, a treant with a magically tainted anvil embedded in its trunk, as an example. Such encounters were strewn across the land, in random and interesting places. Submitted for the approval of the RPG Horror Stories subreddit, I call this story The Tale of the Dumbest Tactical Decision I've Been Privy. Bro, that's a wordy title. They're gonna kick you right out of Midnight Society. So imagine a church. Not a big one, like a small country village church. Now explode that sucker. Imagine the roof blew off of it, like it was in a Donald Duck cartoon, and that the roof flew thousands of kilometers through the air before landing with a kerplunk in the middle of nowhere, partially embedded into the dirt at an angle. So the front part of the roof is jutting out, and then slowly sinks into the earth towards the back. It's about 15 feet high from roof to ceiling at the front of the hole, and about 2 feet high from ceiling to dirt at the back. Kinda like an apocalyptic lean-to. And imagine the denizens of said church are haunting their newly exploded dirt hut as ghasts. A nice little encounter. Should be relatively straightforward. Well, my intrepid heroes, being the upstanding stalwart figures of a burgeoning legend, aren't gonna pass by a bunch of pissed off undead assholes and risk them spreading evil and whatnot in their stead. Understandably, they decide to go stab them. Roll initiative. Ross goes somewhere in the middle. First few people walk up to the church and start with the fisticuffs. And then along comes Ross. Never one to pass up an opportunity to ninja. Or mall ninja, more accurately. I just wish to God there was an occasion where he would decide to pass on the whole ninja thing. He seized his kung fu grip into a titillating idea, dragging us all into our own collective hell for the next few rounds of combat. With the careful measure of a grandmaster chess player, he announces his surefire strategy that will lead him to bingo. I don't play chess, but you shout out bingo and you get crowned, right? Oh, B, stop. Stop with the humor. It's not your forte, and that's all right, you know? That's probably what makes people dislike this OP so much. He's trying really hard to look awesome and be funny, and neither of those things are working. I'm gonna climb the wall, Ross says in triumph. Ross, buddy, why? From a standing hop, you can brush your fingers against the roof. Why on earth would you need to climb the walls just as combat is getting started? I'm gonna climb along the ceiling and drop down behind them so I can surprise them from the back. Uh-huh. Okay. This was my fault, I figured. I hadn't explained the setup correctly, perhaps. Ross isn't that dumb, surely. I just maybe did a bad job of painting a mental picture. Let's back up a second and go over this one more time so that you can decide what you want to do. Ross listens to me, nods. I see that he understands the words I am saying and the order in which I have put them, which makes my intentions clear. Great. So, Ross, what are you going to do? I'm gonna climb along the ceiling and drop down behind them so I can surprise them from the back. Oh, whatever, bro. Just let him do what he wants, for God's sake. Power tripping GM. Hey, that's not how you're supposed to approach this encounter. Bro, how about I do whatever the fuck I want? Okay, so I'm looking around the table and seeing a lot of stupid glances being levied against an oblivious Ross. It's not just me, so that's good. I was worried I was having a stroke for a second. But you know what? I get it. It's a weird setup, and even describing something sometimes can't quite convey an idea accurately. So I literally draw him a goddamn picture. There. That. This is what you have to work with. That little stick figure there with the stinky lines over him, that's where the bad guys are. See this little stick figure with the sword? That's where you guys are. See how much headspace there isn't the more you go in? Good. You understand now, yes? All right. Now that we're all on the same page, Ross, please tell me what you're doing and don't disappoint me. God, what a douche, bro. It reminds me so much of this like knot tying rogue that I had, who was like really focused on archery. So his main goal during combat would be to climb up somewhere and pelt enemies with arrows. And he ended up falling to his death at one point, but I'm so glad the Dungeon Master didn't be like, oh, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Well, it's just a game, okay? I understand you've set up this encounter in a certain way, but playing D&D is a lot like herding cats, okay? It's never going to go the way that you expect it to go. And that's part of the beauty of it. You need to embrace that, OP, instead of making somebody feel like an asshole for whatever move they want to make. At this point, I feel like I've correctly set your expectations in who Ross is and who Ross isn't. I don't feel like I need to draw you a goddamn picture. I'm just gonna leave a nice long blank space, absent of words, so that you can say it yourself. Okay, so we're all frustrated with him together. And then OP's talking down to like the people that are reading the story. Ugh, he's just insufferable. Despite what a catty bitch I had been to Ross in absentia here on the subreddit, I tried not to be an asshole in real life. Despite my feelings, I didn't mean to be condescending, but I was when I asked him, how the fuck do you think you'll sneak past them? The roof is 4 inches above their heads back there. In hindsight, I think that was what caused him to tighten his grip. His stupid grip on that stupid idea. Like, no one's actually that idiotic, right? Like, regardless of how well I worded the description or drew the picture, no one could actually think that they could sneak over a group of ghasts in the middle of combat with only a 4-inch gap to squeeze through, right? It has to be that I offended him and he was gonna show me what for, like how a little kid'll knock a birthday cake on the ground, because if he doesn't get the corner piece, then no one gets any piece. Oh God, you're projecting so hard, OP. Holding up the whole game like, play this encounter the way I want you to play it. Let him fucking roll sneak. Let him fail the roll. Like, what's wrong with that? You warned him, let him do it. Okay, you didn't pass. Now you're in combat. Now we can move forward. Oh God. The frustration is palpable. A DM can't actually force someone not to be an idiot, so I accepted it. Fucking finally. His teammates didn't, though. Dope. It's time to find a new group. They took up the futile call to reason. Whatever. One by one, the table just kind of learned to accept that this was gonna be a thing. So, here's the thing about ghasts. They fucking stink. You gotta make a save versus poison at -2, or start uncontrollably retching. Ross couldn't have been more aware of this, as he had seen some of their comrades moments before fail their throws. Undaunted, Ross still goes to climb that damn wall, and the predictable happens. Well, now he's got to make his climbing checks at a penalty, because retching and gagging isn't exactly conducive to parkour. But if you think that a little penalty would prompt Ross to reconsider his decisions, maybe I do need to draw you a picture after all. Yes, indeed, OP. How dare he play the game the way he wants to play it. I get what people are saying now. This is the worst story so far. I'm frustrated with the OP far more than with Ross. So, Ross starts trying and failing to climb the wall to reach the ceiling. In the meantime, combat abounds. Eventually, he gets up there and then starts climbing upside down. And because I'm sick of arguing with him, I accept his reasoning that surely his ninja would have trained at climbing a freaking angled and arched ceiling upside down as part of her training, so I don't give him any further penalties. He's accomplished his goal, but it's about the time that he's hanging onto the ceiling, crawling along like an inverted turtle at their shoulder height, when he gets huffy, as I tell him that one of the ghasts attacks. The gall of me. I mean, don't I know that he's climbing along the ceilings sneakily? He had asked if he could roll stealth, granted, and I let him roll, but roll or no, I explained that all the stealth in the world could not hide someone being at eye level with the person 6 feet in front of them. So in a huff, he finally decides to just hop down and attack. Oh, another thing about ghasts. They paralyze when they attack. And no, being upside down with all your limbs firmly planting you in place directly in front of the thing that wants to kill you does not make you harder to hit. Shocking, I know. So Ross gets paralyzed. Not that it mattered much, as combat ended the round after he dropped into the dirt like a paralyzed stone. At least he was involved in that combat. Yay? A couple of years later, my friend Rod, who had been playing a cleric in that very topsy-turvy session, was DMing a game. I was playing one of my favorite player characters in my life of gaming. That's a story for another subreddit. Ross is playing as Cat Monk now, and the party just arrived to the brilliant conclusion that an old man wearing a black coat who hired us to retrieve a book must in fact be an evil necromancer. The evidence was pretty conclusive. I mean, he was wearing a black cloak. D&D party members are always funny, man. You really get that mob mentality going. Well, also the paladin had detected something evil from me, and I was holding the book, so it had to be the book, I assured everyone. Because the NPC is smarter than us, he casts a wall of fire between us and him in the tavern that we were meeting him in, bisecting the main room in two. As we're rolling initiative, we're all trying to figure out how to get to the necromancer, because that's totally what he was, I swear. Some are considering rounding the outside of the building. The tougher of our numbers were considering leaping through the flame. Ross wins initiative.
I'm gonna climb on that ceiling and crawl over the flames.
In that moment, everyone at the table that wasn't Ross collectively became one. For a moment, our minds found solace in the face of stupidity, and we melded into a hive mind. And it was as one that 5 open palms smacked 5 respective foreheads in complete disbelief. Not this shit again. Rod quickly assures Ross that the flames reach the ceiling, and still, Ross intends to climb the wall. Someone points out that he can climb the stairs to the balcony that overlooks the room to reach the ceiling instead of just climbing up the wall, and still, Ross will climb. Of all the reason and pleading and incredulity we levied at Ross, unchanged was his conviction. But Ross's cat girl was much lower level than his ninja girl, and so when he went to climb the wall, unlike those years before, he failed, and kept right on failing. But failure wasn't an option for him. Oh no! And so he kept trying. Something like 4 straight melee rounds. Arrows and spells are being fired through the wall in either direction, and in the periphery of the firefight, it was like those cartoons, where a cat climbs up a wall or a cliff, and then slides back down with the lines of the claw marks comically left in its wake, except it was much more depressing than that. But at least he's staying safe and out of combat. To our credit, one of our number eventually realized that the wall of fire was illusionary, and that the necromancer had escaped, unscathed and undetected, right around the same time that Ross finally reached the ceiling and discovered for himself that he could not, in fact, climb over the flames. The illusionary flames? Why can't he climb over the flames? I don't understand. I'm not going to go over every instance of Ross's failure to climb walls during combat. He never did learn his lesson, but it also didn't happen every single combat. But I will say that it happened enough. That's not the point of this story. They say insanity is repeating the same action and expecting a different result, much like OP even inviting Ross to these games. Well, we kept letting Ross play with us, and kept expecting him to not act like a total knob. No, the point of this story isn't to list every little quibble. The point is to express that some horror stories are your own goddamn fault. Hey, there's a bit of that self-reflection, a little bit of realization peeking through. And yet, despite all that I've already shared, we still expected a different result. And to be fair, Ross had never TPK'd an entire campaign before, but we'll get to those stories in a bit. Edit. TLDR. Stupid keeps stupiding up the side of stupid walls. The walls aren't stupid though, only the ones stupiding up the side of them are stupid, and I still haven't gotten over it. Many years later, just keep on keeping on. Hold on to that one guy because you're such a better player than him. You know how he should approach every encounter before he even gets there, man. Like, who cares? We're here to play a game. We're here to have a little bit of fun. Fudge a roll or two. Let him climb the fucking wall. Like, is it really that big of a deal? You're playing imagination game with math rocks and you want to sit here and be a purist? Be like, oh, well, I'm the best math rock imagination player there is. I designed this campaign, so I know how things are supposed to go. No, you obviously do not. Do players do stupid things in campaigns sometimes? Hell yeah, all the time. But they don't generally get singled out for a Reddit story years and years later. It's just exceedingly petty of OP. Is Ross dumb? Yeah, but he's there to have a good time. Let him do some dumb stuff. Like, what's wrong with that? When I sit down and play D&D with the Discord peeps, you better believe that I'm gonna do some dumb stuff. And I'm still gonna upload it so it can be chronicled for perpetuity just how dumb I actually am. But even if Ross or I am not the best player at Dungeons and Dragons, at least we're there to have fun, not taking it super serious like OP. Ugh, that's a tough one to get to, but I've not had enough punishment quite yet. So we will jump back into this poem and see what comes next. Another diversion, and still without aversion to that lumpy Neo, I invite along Rod to help us. Despite the third wheel, an adventure through the planes of existence is just what we need. But in the distance, Ross is consistent and remains a terrible weed. Adrift in the Astral, a challenge they tackled with glee, fending off Gith and fending off demons, a silver thread they see. Taking Frisbees to the face has taught Ross not a thing. In frustration, he explains his narration to my incredulation. In him, my faith I realize misplaced as he cuts the string. In deflation, the game meets cessation, and I consider a new vocation. In a world of Ross, there can be but one answer to his equation. There be no suasion or evation to one unalienable truth. Ross just sucks. It's actually one of the better sections of the poem, if I'm being completely honest. Still not good, but better. Frustrated player strands everyone in the astral plane, effectively TPKing the party and ending the entire campaign. Names have been changed. For anyone interested, the previous entry in the Ross ballad can be found here, which I just read. This is the big one. Of all the BS that Ross put me through, and the list is substantial in both D&D and real life, this is honestly the one that hurt the most. This was the moment he broke me as a DM and made me just throw my arms up in the air like I just didn't care, because honestly, I didn't anymore. You can't win against Ross. He's a compact ball of oblivious misery that just cannot be defeated. To oppose him is folly. All you can do is avoid him until he decides on his own to leave the goddamn country. So, who here has heard of the tales of the outer planes? If you want to take a minute to either act smugly because you have heard of it, or to go quickly look it up so you can act smugly because you're pretending that you've heard of it, you go ahead. And you go ahead and keep talking down your nose at people, OP. It's really becoming. That's how you ingratiate yourself to Reddit readers. Jesus. The House of TSR was founded on sprawling and insurmountable epic adventures once upon a time. A trend I'm glad to say Wizards has returned to with the 5th edition. There was a dry spell there for a while, but we persevered. What once was great remains so. Tales of the Outer Planes is a boss of a module that's a hell of a lot of crazy fun. Or it would have been, save for Ross's best efforts. Maybe effort is the wrong word to use there, because he sure made it seem effortless. You put whatever connotation you want onto those words, and it's probably right. Ross was like that illusion where you see the bunny one way or an old lady the other way. Is it a bunny or a lady? Was he an asshole or an idiot? Yes. The answer is yes to both. Yes. Anyone too enraptured with my stream of consciousness rantings, thinly disguised as a story to go look up Tales of the Outer Planes, here's a quick rundown of what it is. You know them there outer planes? You gonna go up there. Which ones, you ask? Yes! Again, the answer is yes. Over the course of 12 or so levels, you'll end up taking a selfie in an elemental plane of water, rent an Airbnb in one of the 7 heavens, get a few photos for the gram on Olympus, and take a walking tour through a couple layers of the abyss. Hashtag living your best play character life. Yeah, that's what it's about. It's not about having the experiences, it's about telling other people that I did. All of this is facilitated by the World Serpent Inn, an interdimensional tavern with rooms that lead to all sorts of fun places. The Ethereal Plane, for example. Now, this was a 1st edition module, back in the not to be fucked with lightly days, which honestly worked for me. With a bit of tinkering, it would be a challenging adventure for my 2nd edition players. I'm a DM who isn't afraid to throw my players in the shit, unless they're approaching an encounter the wrong way, right? To make it even more interesting, I decided to incorporate an article from Dragon Magazine 351 titled Alternate Primes. It was a series of adventures that could be tied together through the use of the World Serpent Inn. These adventures would take a party brave enough for the challenge through the different campaign settings of D&D, such as Al-Qadim, Dark Sun, and Ravenloft. I decided I would follow Tales of the Outer Planes as the main adventure, and the AP adventures as a way to mix it up on a random occasion, as well as a means by which some extra experience can be earned, so as to level match Outer Planes if they ever fell behind in the module. Also because the Ravenloft adventures feature my favorite D&D character of all time, Lord Soth. I'm all about that Soth. But hey, what do I know? I'm just sipping Soth. Soth features on the cover of that issue, and I have that exact image tattooed on my arm because I likes me the Soths. Lots of Soths. I wasn't going to pass up an opportunity to put my players into Sithicus, is what I'm getting at. By the way, did you know that a group of Soths is known as a boardroom? A boardroom of Soths. There's something that you know now. You're welcome. Oh, thank you so much for this pearl of wisdom, OP. I'm sure I'll use it to great effect. The story is so aggravating to me after all these years for a number of reasons. Not only was the adventure epic and awesome, not only was I going to get to play around with my favorite dreadlord, kinda, not only was this all meant to be a light and breezy distraction from the main campaign, but it also included what I still consider as the best 1-2 combination of player characters that I have ever had the privilege of DMing. Marcus Vaughn, the cleric, played by my friend Eric the cleric, and Alexander Mann, the action man, the fighter, played by another friend, Rod. They both worked great together. Marcus was the loyal friend, quiet and wise. Alex was about as sharp as a brick, but he was a jovial and flippant comrade in arms. It was honestly a good pairing. The three of us have made up a pretty consistent core playing group for most of my DMing career, but those two characters just worked beautifully together. There was also a mage played by Ross's friend Max, whom he RP'd as a young but eager to learn rookie. And then there was Ross. He played a paladin named Zelda. Oh no. She had about as much personality as some old Venetian blinds. Sure, she could cast a shadow, but didn't really accomplish much beyond that. And we always considered replacing her with something fancier, but just never quite got around to that project. Oh my god, I'm actually impressed with how accurate that analogy ended up being. Something tells me you are often impressed with yourself, OP. Now, every DM, like every parent, does have favorites. Sure, you love all your children equally or whatever, but if there's a Sophie's Choice situation, you already know which one is going down. Every parent and every DM has had that conversation with themselves at one time or another. You don't have kids, do you, OP? Ross. Ross was always the answer. Ross is always the answer. I plus fuck equals Ross. Solve for I. It's a trick question. I is an imaginary number that represents literally any fucking thing because the answer is always Ross. That doesn't mean I conveyed that. I worked very hard, in fact, to avoid any semblance of my burgeoning hostility to the sound of his stupid voice. My normal playstyle as a DM was to just throw a frisbee out there and trust that someone will run to it and throw it back. I don't favor anyone. Fun is out there to be had, and all you have to do is get after it. Unless you're trying to climb all walls. Don't try to fucking climb all walls in my campaigns. Granted, some people are better than others at catching a frisbee. So when you see that short, chubby old man quietly moping off to the side, you eventually just start sailing a few in that direction. You try not to make it obvious, but you're setting him up for an easy one. Well, Ross didn't take to subtleties. Playing frisbee with Ross is like how Bart plays frisbee with Santa's little helper. You just hit him in the fucking face full force with it, and his dumb expression would never change. So despite meeting the gods and planar beings in the ethereal, water, air, fire, and earth planes, as well as day trips to Oerth and, I think, this is like 10 years ago, Sigil, Ross just ain't having fun. He could hang a lampshade on Zelda by doing something generically lawful good every now and then, or casting a healing spell or whatever, but she was never going to grow up and become a real girl. And because Ross wasn't deluded by words like ninja or cat girl with this character, he saw through his shortcomings for once in his life and realized,
This was BS.
and I gotta hand it to him. He was right to not be having fun. It was BS. Every session he just sat there and got frisbees thrown in his fucking face all day. I mean, I'd get pissed too after a while. You're remembering this 10 years later, OP. You are mad beyond mad. All these posts about a 10-year-old experience, bro, I can't help you. So the group is a little over halfway through the module, and if you're worried about spoilers from a 32-year-old D&D module, well, I can't help you out there, bud. Your priorities don't match reality. This is a you problem. Yeah, so the best solution is definitely to just be a dick about it. So P's solution to everything. So they're halfway through Outer Planes. Alex Mann had just gotten married to the Drider who frequents the tavern. Well, it would be more accurate to say he kind of sold himself into perpetual indentured servitude for the Drider, but he was happy, so whatever, I guess. The cleric and the mage have gotten a nice little big brother, little brother thing that's going on. And Ross's paladin was just some pissy blinds, all tangled up in its own cord. When all of a sudden, they're approached by a hooded figure in desperate need of some champions. You see, this person's master, an arcane sage, has had their soul trapped within the astral plane while searching for a legendary magical item known as the Book of the Planes. They agree to go and rescue the sage, which is great because they're soon to find out that they're about to prevent a Githyanki invasion of the prime material plane by doing so. Or they would have, except that they didn't count on one thing that can never be defeated: Ross's frustration and idiocy, a deadly combination from which there is no hope of salvation. So we're cruising along when, behold, they found the trail. The silver thread tethering the mage's body to the mage's soul has been found. All they need to do is find the mage's soul, stumble across the Githyanki, foil their invasion, gather the Book of the Planes, and following the thread, just row back to Spain like there's no mañana. Simple, right? Well, it's D&D, so there's always encounters. Don't act shocked, you know there's always encounters. And Ross has basically had enough of this. Being attacked by some demons, everybody rolls initiative. Eric does this, Max does that, Rod does something else. Ross, on his turn, thinks for a moment. You see in his mind that he has reasoned that the demons are after the silver thread, the one that's tethering the mage's soul to her freaking body. And he reasons still further that if the demons want it, then it is the problem.
I cut the thread.
Oh, that mage is dead. Now, no DM ever wants to actively thwart a player's decision, unless you're climbing on walls. If you're climbing on walls in my campaign, bro. If a player wants to be stupid, they can live with the consequences. The Dungeon Master has the benefit of knowing what the consequences will be, and is often more than happy to inflict them for their own perverse amusement. I speak from experience. You want to draw how many cards from the deck of many things? You got it, Sparky. Congratulations, the god of the undead fucking hates you now, so you might want to keep an eye out for that. But now and again, a decision will be considered so dumb that it threatens the very fabric of the game. And in those times, we DMs will ask the question that carries more weight than anything else in all of Dungeons & Dragons could possibly carry. It's those 3 little words that will give even the most cavalier of adventurer pause to consider their life choices. Are you sure? It's the tone that sells it. The 3 other players, even Ross's shut-in of a friend that has no D&D experience prior to this game, takes note. Their heads all swivel in unison to look back at Ross, who's suddenly very alone in the room. And to his credit, he pauses, considers his actions, he weighs his options, and re-examines the playing field.
Well, I can't think of anything else to do, so yeah, I cut the thread.
Too much credit, apparently. His teammates start assailing him with suggestions and cries of fear. That silver thread, the one that tethers the mage's soul to her body, might kill her if cut. And Ross's paladin is surely wise enough to maybe figure at least that out. And a paladin wouldn't knowingly kill someone if it's even a possibility. Surely. Surely? I would knowingly kill someone. And don't call me Shirley. But Ross is basically done. If he considered stabbing the demons that were attacking him instead of murdering a helpless NPC, his frustration clouded his reasoning. And don't call him Shirley. Hey, that's my line. You back off. You write your own jokes. I steal the jokes from popular media. With a grumpy expression, and I swear to God, an eye misty from frustration at his own impotence as a player, he just nods.
Yeah, I don't know what else to do. I cut the thread.
For a second there, I was transported back to a moment years prior. A moment where I, Eric, and Ross sat together around that very same table, and I had asked him what he wanted to do on his turn.
I fired my proton pack at the cab.
We did read that story. Then, as now, Ross had been given the opportunity to reconsider his decision at the behest of his game master and his teammates alike. And then, as now, Ross had weighed and measured everything and doubled down on doing the wrong thing. And it all became so clear to me in that moment. I'd adopted Ross into my life when he was in a terrible situation. I had let him live with me rent-free for over a month, moved his shit from a literal dungeon into my place, and then later into the apartment that I had found for him. And then I became roommates with him for 5 years straight, all out of pity, because he reminded me of the social idiot that I had once been when I was 15 years old and hadn't gotten my shit together and did some growing up. Just a sad, inept sack of bewilderment, except he was 5 years older than me. I had been convinced that all he needed was someone in his corner, someone to give him the benefit of the doubt, and over time, he'd get better. But there he was, years later, unchanged, doing the same exact thing for the same exact reasons, because he was a stupid asshole, from womb to the tomb. You call this being in his corner? Bro, I'd hate to have you in my corner, honestly. There were frustrations in our friendship, both big and small, but I honestly think that was the moment I realized I was done with him. Even though it was a genuinely innocuous thing, just a game of D&D, I finally accepted that Ross was going to continue festering just as he was. I think it's because it was such an unimportant thing that I finally got that perspective. Like the more important stuff had been prepared for. This was small enough to slip through my defenses. He wasn't gonna change. He wasn't gonna get better, so I closed my book. Alright, well, you do that. You're no longer a paladin as you just murdered someone. You'll have to atone for that before you can get your powers back, and I honestly don't know how to proceed. Because now you're all lost in the astral plane, and you can't stop a world-ending event. I need a few weeks to think about this. Turns out, it took more than a few weeks to figure it out. About 2 years ago, we were playing Out of the Abyss when they made it to Graven Hollow. I Easter egged Marcus searching for tomes on the astral plane, so about 10 years for any movement on a resolution. Marcus still hadn't forgiven Zelda, so whatever had happened in the intervening years must have been bad. Eric and Rod were stoked when they recognized Marcus out of character, and regaled the other players with tales of the Planeswalker campaign that Ross had derailed. Max spewing Pepsi out of his nose when being welcomed to the club, Marcus Vaughn's incredible wired clothes hanging apparatus, Alex's unbelievable cooking skills, the weird but good, but weird experience that is best left undescribed, and Ross. That time that Ross killed an entire fucking campaign. So, yeah. But this was just the side campaign. I still had my main campaign, and if you think this is the only time that Ross has ever single-handedly caused me to end an entire campaign by being stupid, well, I haven't done a very good job of explaining just who it is we are actually dealing with here. But I got you covered. I still got one more tale for you. TLDR. Paladin murders NPC because the player isn't having fun, ends campaign by helplessly stranding the entire party in the astral plane. Pull the string, and this whole thing's coming down. That's beautiful. Honestly, I don't think I've ever heard of a player derailing an entire campaign so easily. I gotta give props to OP for letting it happen, you know, not forcing Ross's hand in any way. And I don't know, I kind of see where he's coming from. If demons are immune to physical damage and second edition, like paladin spells, I don't think they really get any damaging spells. So what are you gonna do? Just sit around with your dick in your hand? I scratched my balls. That's my action for this turn. I don't know, he wanted to do something, so he did the only thing that he could do and murdered an NPC. Everything's normal here. But at least you were able to kind of bring it back around, even though the person that was trapped in the astral plane for so long was probably irreparably damaged. They come out just, you know, completely crazy. But that's the fun part about the astral planes, isn't it? Everybody's in it just for fun and games. But it's real. You could get lost for a long, long time. I don't have any experience with it in D&D, but when I was playing a multi-user dungeon called Ardwolf, I'd get in my little amulet of the plains, enter one of those pools, and just wander forever. So I do know that the plains are not to be taken lightly. Overall, I do gotta say that I disliked Ross more in this one, mostly because he ruined the fun for the entire table. And OP gets a point because he actually let it happen. He's not power gaming and being like, oh, no, you don't. You can't do that. He's just like, okay, if that's really what you want to do. So the score is tied now. We've got one story where I dislike OP more and one story where I dislike Ross more. The only thing to do now is execute a tiebreaker. So let's get into the last story of the Ross saga, and we'll see how it goes. Oh, but first the crappy poem. At last, I have no one to blame for the pain I endured. Ignorance I can't feign, his talents were plain. My lessons were learned, I assure, from challenges mundane as well as arcane. I have finally matured. He is my bane, to tolerate I deign. Of pity, I have been cured. One final upheaval, the river is evil. I'm no longer deceitful, and I can admit this as gleeful. Ross just sucks. That time, a couple of player characters derailed a campaign, or how I learned to stop worrying and end a complete campaign setting. Names have been changed. Alright, Ross, again. This is it. This is the last one. Speaking of last one, here was the last one before the last one that we just read. I don't even really know where to start with this one. I guess I should be upfront about the amount of Ross in this story. Almost all of the stories I've told about that chibi chipmunk of a man have involved the campaign that I'm about to talk about. As a result, most of the tasty bits have come and gone. This is more a general story of how an okayish DM let a campaign get shit all over until it was just a big diarrhea Sunday. But you better believe that poop-covered cherry on top was Ross. This is the story of how a few terrible and destructive decisions, one simple player mistake, and Ross being, well, about as smart as I hope you'd come to expect, resulted in me completely giving up on my first homebrew campaign setting and closed the second chapter of my D&Ding career. I sat up here on my high horse long enough, clucking my tongue and looking down my nose in judgmental distaste at the people who consider me friends for long enough. Something about getting off my high horse. These fucking analogies are killing me, man. You're not the only one, my dude. I think I'm dying. We've done a lot of sagas on this channel, and this has been the one that I enjoyed the least, I'm sad to say. I don't plan what I'm gonna write out. I just start typing, and eventually something kind of funny comes out, I hope. It's not funny. The point is, I'm not gonna sit here for 10 minutes thinking for the right turn of phrase just to take a shot at myself. Fair is fair, and my time has come, and I ain't putting any pepper on it. I was not the best DM. Most of us were in our 20s. I was reliable. I really think that was enough to delude those fools into thinking that I was better than I was. My campaign had all the tropes of terrible world building, hodgepodge of cultures and geography that made no sense, check. Lifting characters from comics and ideas from fantasy in their entirety and just plopping them down into my setting, check. A super evil continent of evil that is evil because, just because, check. And other stuff. I did that thing where you over-prepare way too much bullshit that your players generally don't give a fuck about, and then I took them on a whirlwind tour of everything that I had created, only to be surprised when they couldn't keep any of the details straight. It wasn't perfect, is the point. It was fun, but a lot of the heavy lifting was done by my players, and I just kinda took credit for it. Just like them political party that you don't like. Okay, that's a good one. I'm Canadian, bud. I don't care about your weird two-party system. Statistically speaking to the US residents, of course. All you others get it. What's even with that two-party system, am I right? Weirdos. And you lost me again. OP has a talent. Not a particularly useful talent, but it is a talent. See, I just start typing. My brain and my fingers aren't exactly connected. I get distracted and off topic pretty quickly. Sue me. Actually, really quickly, did you know that Canada has legislation protecting the right to apologize as a simple act of empathy and not an admission of guilt? Anyway, so that was a paragraph worth of nothing basically to say that a few of my players were tired and antsy, and one in particular, we'll call him Stan, was already generally a shit disturber. He had gotten it into his head that the head of a church, like the Pope head, was actually evil. The Pope head. So we decided to sneak into the Pope's chambers and confront him with his evilness. Now, the fact that the Pope actually was evil is kind of besides the point. That the entire church was a scam, and the big bad evil god who had died in legend had actually just been broken apart, with his actual godhood becoming a new, less powerful deity, has really no bearing on my anger here. I was pissed because there were no clues, no telegraphs, no nothing. This was a shit disturber, disturbing shit, just for the fun of it. And he just so happened to do it in the worst possible way. The great big epic plot, I was too ambitious for my own good back then, that would result in my players literally recreating the world, was in jeopardy. So when Stan went after the Pope, dragging another player's character along with him, I mean dragged is the wrong word, that guy's a little rascal all on his own, we call him Turnip, they were rapidly approaching an extremely high-leveled villain head-on with his deepest secrets, while their allies slept unaware and vulnerable to retribution elsewhere in the church. So I killed them. It's the only goddamn time in my life that I have fucking murdered a player character without pause or regrets. Idiots. Yeah, OP, what a bunch of idiots that they didn't know the thing that you didn't signal to them in any way. God, what an asshole. But I didn't want to end the campaign there, so I had an ally sneak the rest of the party out of the church away from danger. I'm a big fan of things not happening in a vacuum. There are repercussions, ripples, and events to stuff that my players do in the world. Some of it's good, some of it is bad. A powerful evil villain thinking that the group is going to reveal his secrets? Yeah, bad. That's a bad one. Should have figured that out on your own. Not sure why I had to spell it out for you. See, I give OP a chuckle and then he throws it back in my face. Such a douche, bro. A reason that they would need to lay low, but an adventure compromised of a group of super recognizable heroes playing rummy in a safe house for months just didn't appeal to me. So I decided to actually send them underground for a while. And I gotta tell you, I was proud of what I came up with. OP? Proud? Imagine that. I'm proud of no other concept I came up with like I am with that adventure. The memory is bittersweet these days, considering how it all ended. We took a couple of weeks off so I could make an entirely new campaign. When we met up, their contact told them that he had a job that would send them underground for a while, and that he had a map for them. I proceeded to hand them about 40 pages of loose leaf paper filled with writing, and apologized out of character saying that it was only about half done. My players were confused, so I explained. Centuries ago, a dwarven expedition set forth through the Underdark in search of a legendary material known as black water. The water is said to have infinite, untold power. 100 dwarves set out, one returned with the vial, and that vial was secreted away by the dwarven clan. But in the years that followed, they accomplished some of the most legendary feats that the world had ever seen, and it was on good authority that their engines of myth were powered by that single vial. If they could make a way to the source, a mystical pump that will flow a regular supply back to the surface could be set up, and in the time they were gone, their contact would use his substantial resources to settle things down for a safe return. The water was a MacGuffin. The real point was the adventure and the map that I gave them. It was a journal from an apprentice scribe of the dwarven expedition detailing their journey. It was written entirely in character, with all the knowledge of the journeyman. It described threats and challenges, but sometimes only vaguely and sometimes incorrectly. It even used certain dwarven words untranslated, as there was no English equivalent, forcing my players to try and suss out their meaning from the context. I thought it was a brilliant opportunity to fester some dread into the party and just generally have fun with the format. They were of course free to try a different path, but they might not get there, or they might encounter something worse than what the journal had described. I had a few emergency contingency plans in place if they did, but the journal was a guaranteed path. Over the course of this adventure, I had added about another 20 pages and still had about 20-ish to go. It would have detailed the whole doomed affair, and it was a lot of fun to make. But there was a wrinkle. The contact sent them to meet an associate of his who had the pump, an NPC named Wong. When they met Wong halfway en route to the delve site, they discovered that he was a great big bald warrior. Wong was actually evil. Actually, Wong was actually dead. This was a Grigori, a character one of the party had actually met before, but that character had retired to deal with the god of the undead hating his fucking guts. Seriously, don't play with a deck of many things. And the player didn't recognize his description. He was planning on killing the whole party in revenge for their slights to his brothers, whom they had also previously met and kinda killed on one occasion. So this is gonna be fun. Madars, aboleths, and dows, and rolling balls of fungi that melted your insides with sudden betrayal thrown into the mix. We're all set for the next dozen sessions or so. The party consisted of a glorious cleric and also the old stalwart bard who lasted from session 1, both played by Eric, a badass bitch of a cleric played by Rod, a dwarven attaché played by Brandon, and a druid played by Ross. I think there was something else, I don't know. A lot from that campaign has been overshadowed in my memory in the intervening years. I'd like to pause right here for one moment and describe myself as a DM for a second. I grew up when D&D was hard, like gay porn hard. Okay. Experience was fought for. Levels were magnificent achievements unto themselves. Challenges were frequent and rough, and treasure was random. You rolled. That will become depressingly relevant in just a moment. So they're following the map. It first describes how the Dwarven expedition spent a month building an elevator down a 500-foot underground cliff, and during that time something was moving through the stone and snatching dwarves. So they fuck right past Madar before it can really mess with them, and the elevator is rotted away. I'm not going to get into every little thing. I just wanted to express that there were indeed some challenges. Luckily, I had a few good players, not Ross, who were quite adept with some creative thinking. Believe me. Seriously, you gotta believe. Anyhow, they randomly roll for treasure after one encounter results in them finding the monster's hoard. One of the rolls is for some drums. Who here has actually encountered a cursed item of any substance? Like something that will really fuck up a game? Hopefully not many. A cursed item here or there is a funny enough thing, but a DM should know better than to introduce something that can really gum up the works. Seriously, don't play around with a deck of many things. The group could identify magic items. They weren't high enough level to remove curses. They all agreed to wait until they had refreshed their spells to identify everything. And then watch came, and Brandon decides he just can't wait. On his watch, he decides to play with the bongos, because they look like bongos. They were drums. Of deafening. I ask him how he plays with them, because I'm a big DM wearing his big boy pants, and I make the decisions, no matter how terrible. You play with the cursed item, you're gonna get the curse. Literally no common sense is what I'm getting at. Brandon drums his palms on his knees, doing a little beat. Ba-ba-da-ba-bum. Hitting each palm in turn against the respective knee in succession, back and forth. And I started to relax until he finishes off with hitting both palms down against both knees simultaneously, thereby officially activating the curse. Everyone within a certain radius is immediately made deaf, permanently. Restoration is needed, which they can't cast. Fuck me. What fun. Brandon's dwarf realizes he can't hear anymore, puts the drums back, and promptly goes to sleep in order to act just as fucking confused as all the other characters in the morning. Asshole after my own heart, that one. Okay, so the party is permanently deaf, in the Underdark, only a quarter of the way through, with no way back the way they came because they can't swim up a rushing waterfall. One of Ross's few good plays was saving everyone from drowning by parting the water so they could actually climb out. I can work with this, but you know what? Wong, he needs to go. I can't have my players get betrayed now. There's something going around and no one has any penicillin. They got enough to deal with right now, and they don't need a backstabbing by a demigod. Oh, he was a demigod, kind of. That's good information to have. So one night, while the party is camped by a river, I have Grawangi just start fucking cursing him out. They obviously can't hear him, and he hates them. So he takes the opportunity to just lay into him and say how much he's going to murder them. It's a lot. He's planning on doing a lot of murder to them. They're deaf, I hear you exclaim. How does him threatening to kill them reveal anything? Well, if you settle down, I'll tell you. Someone could lip read? No, but seriously, stop interrupting, and I'll tell you. We could sit here all day and keep guessing, or, I could get on with it. Oh, please, God, get on with it. I've been writing this crap for a week now. It's time to head home with this shit, so zip it for 2 more seconds and I will indeed tell you. Ross. Ross could technically hear. As a druid, he had a familiar. Unlike in 5th or maybe other editions, I don't know much about 3rd or 4th because those kind of passed me by. Familiars were actual animals summoned from the wilderness and not some spiritual what's-it given physical form. Ross had summoned a familiar in the Underdark and had gotten a bat. And through the familiar, he could experience its senses. And thankfully, Ross had made a point of saying he was sending his bat off to go hunt that night, so that it was out of the range of those drums. If he hadn't, he'd be permanently stuck with a deaf bat as his familiar, with no way to replace it. So thank fuck he sent it away, or he'd be deaf as a bat. So it all comes down to Ross. Never has a more disappointing sentence been written by my hand. Ross, through his bat, hears the muttering. He can't quite make out the noise as it's low and the river is loud, but he distinctly hears threats to murder each and every member of the party. Well, everyone except Wangori. Figure that's enough to put 1 and 1 together. That's right, I had learned nothing. That was about to change, with a few simple words to be spoken in just a few moments. Ross wakes everyone up to warn them about what he's heard. Okay, this is it. They're gonna discover Wangori's evil and big fight and huzzas and back to our regularly scheduled nightmare. And then Ross, ever so delicately, placed the cherry atop this whole mess.
The river is evil.
Huh?
The river is evil. I heard it muttering that it wanted to kill us.
Fucking excuse me?
The river is evil.
I know what I did was dumb and rough. I thought I could spin it into something fun, and that was what he had come up with. Everyone else around the table had figured it out already, but Ross was the only one who could hear. Everyone was relying on him as their ears. Oh God, everyone was relying on him. The completion of this campaign relied on Ross. You know that shot in horror movies where they dolly in while also zooming out to really fuck with the perspective? I felt that then. The river was evil. I immediately lost all confidence in my ability to run that campaign. I was done. Fucked had been too shit at that point, and I needed to do the mercy of just putting a bullet behind the ear of my campaign because clearly no one else was going to do it. A few days later, I let everyone know that I didn't think the campaign could continue. There were some token, half-hearted assurances of, nah, dog, it's still good and stuff, but in truth, we all saw the writing on the wall. It was hard to miss. Spelled 100 times over in letters 50 feet tall. People called nerds, they go the house. Wait, my Latin's a little off. I mean to say, the game was over. Listen, I don't know what you wanted from me. If you expected to go out on Ross with a bang, you've never heard him whimper. Not every RPG horror story needs to be about one person being indignant or incredulous at other people's fuckery. Every time you point a finger, there's 3 others pointing right back at you. We should all learn to look inwards and finger ourselves. Every once in a while. Let he who is without idiocy cast the first firebolt and all that. No, this was my horror story. Ross just had a walk-on part in the background. Sure, he pooped his pants and ran off screen. But it was all in the background on another TV show. I was the bad actor, casually chewing the scenery, front and center. I probably got a couple more horror stories in me, but they don't feature Ross, and I'm gonna take a break. Maybe check out Ross's Facebook page, see what he's getting up to. We are still friends on Facebook. I don't want to talk about it. I know I'm sick. And so, that's it. Hope that whatever this is turned out to meet your expectations, and if it didn't, well, I'm sorry. And that's a simple expression of empathy, not an admission of guilt. Stay in school. Edit. TLDR. It takes a village to ruin a game. And corrected a thing, too. God, man, so it's still basically a complete tie. Ross thinks the river is evil. He's still not able to put 2 and 2 together, which just must be incredibly frustrating for both the DM and the party. Okay, I get that. But then there's also the DM sending people on this, like, extremely elaborate quest. The whole point is just to get them underground and away from the big bad evil guy. So who's really worse? Is anyone worse? I gotta call it a tie. I didn't like OP, but I also didn't like Ross. But for different reasons, you know? OP is actively, like, way too serious. He's like,
D&D is serious business, guys.
while Ross is just kind of a simple idiot, incapable of picking up the clues that are laid down right in front of him. So with those 2 definitions in mind, I guess I will have to say that I dislike OP slightly more at the end of the day. We're all sitting around to play imagination with math rocks, okay? It's not that serious. Let the guy climb on the ceiling, let him think that the river is evil, and try and incorporate that in some way. It sounds like he was just throwing you twists and turns, and you didn't really know how to deal with them as a dungeon master. And OP, he's prepared as hell. He's got an 80-sheet booklet on what to do in the Underdark, but he can't catch a curveball to save his life. And that's a frustrating part for me. I don't know, man. I'm probably not super eager to jump back into another RPG horror story just because I don't feel like this one delivered with a bang. You know, something like Ramtide and the Adelaide Saga. That was only 5 parts and it delivered such a bang. This was how many parts? Like almost 10. And I still feel like it went out and it's just like, yep, that's the end. Okay, bye everybody. So a little bit disappointed, but not more so than I've come to expect from this OP, I suppose. So whether you just watched the beefy final episode or the ultra beefy compilation of this video, I just want you to know that I appreciate you guys watching, and I do hope that you will like, comment, and or subscribe. Maybe share this video around if you should like, particularly if you know somebody that loves D&D and cringe, all mashed together. I also hope you'll check out the links in the description. Me and my wife's channel, Mr. and Mrs. ReddX, my personal subreddit, r/ReddXReads, Teespring if you're trying to rock the merch, Amazon affiliate, currently goes to my microphone, but if you click through there, buy basically anything else on Amazon, I get kicked back a little bit of cash for that, so I definitely appreciate it. We've also got social medias, like the Discord and the Twitter and the Facebook, oh, and my gorgeous, wonderful, beautiful, generous patrons, of course. I would like to thank them all, but especially ZeroMMX, Lady Nix, Robert Waits, Pope Squid, Cider Drinker, Tato Ferret, The Last Shinobi, Mark211, Aaron W, Mitch, John Hero, Candy Sora, Fire Drake, Little Lone Wolf, Miss Monday, Silent Revolver, JM Coon, Leon Ebers, TSM Kirby, Redwind, Synaptic Boomstick, Jerry, Staples Yeet, Cake Jerry, that's a different Jerry, my boy Nat One Nick, Brilliant Tamago, that big delicious jelly donut, the one and only Livison, the OG James Cook, Papa Jesus, and Aaron Lennox. Thank you guys so much for helping me to live the dream. I don't know if we need to worry about monetization. OP does have kind of a potty mouth, you know, but I got like this self-certification on the channel, so hopefully I could just like be honest with YouTube and they'll let me get away with saying the bad words. I have yet to really find out how it works, but I'm hopeful at the very least. Regardless, if you guys would like to help push back against demonetization, I hope that you will join these lovely people in supporting the channel, and I thank you very, very much in advance for that. But if you can't do it right now, it just ain't in the cards or something like that, don't sweat it too hard, friends. I just appreciate you coming on through, hanging out with me, and I hope that you'll come on back and hang out with me again tomorrow, because really, the views is how my beard stays so buttered. In order to join us, you'll need to keep yourself safe out there, wash your hands, but also take some time out and do something that you personally enjoy today. Maybe watching some more of them ReddX sagas. Oh, that's so beefy. That's good stuff. Always remember, friends, that you are loved, you are worthy, and you definitely, definitely deserve it. I will see you in the next one. And until then, friends, bye-bye.